A Canadian pastor is facing 10 years in prison for railing against the nation's COVID-19 lockdown policies. Today, his family, along with other Christians, gathering outside the Canadian embassy here in Washington, D.C., saying Canada needs to restore religious freedom. NTD's Sam Wang brings us more.
It's a rainy day here in D.C., but outside the Canadian embassy, this group of Christians isn't letting a little drizzle to stop them from speaking out. Canadian pastor Arthur Pawlowski is now facing up to a decade behind bars after delivering a sermon to a crowd of truckers earlier this year.
My mom and dad came here from communism, and they were promised at the Canadian embassy freedom. And here we are today, where we are being very much persecuted for our beliefs.
In February last year, Pawlowski delivered a speech to truckers who were protesting federal vaccine mandates by blocking the U.S.-Canada border. He urged them to go about their plan peacefully and not to, quote, break the line. Just days after the event, he was arrested. The court found him guilty of mischief and other charges.
I believe the charges of mischief and especially eco-terrorism are really unjust.
There's no mischief there. This man he's fed the homeless. He stood by the truckers, he fed them, he preached the gospel of Christ, and he stood against some things that are very ungodly in Canada. That's what he did wrong in their sight.
For what they call mischief, which is either they don't like what they say, but they also don't want anybody else to hear it. And finally, they don't like what they say, they don't want anybody else to hear it, and they want to teach them a lesson so nobody else will say anything.
Pastor Pawlowski is no stranger to the Canadian law enforcement. He was arrested 5 times after continuing his church service during the nationwide COVID-19 lockdown. His name first became well known back in 2021, following a confrontation with police and other health officials. They visited his church to make sure it was obeying pandemic guidelines, which included limiting the number of people and social distancing. Pawlowski said that they entered his church without a warrant, and therefore, he kicked them out.
What's happening to Pastor Pawlowski, if we don't stand and fight this, it's going to happen right here in America.
Reporting from Washington, D.C., Sam Wang, NTD News.